come back to Commodore Sujit, if you're there. I'd like your perspective. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, Commodore Sujit, you have been and also advisor to one of the leading think tank of India, in fact, that advises Prime Minister on such a key policy, especially in the maritime. Admiral Nizam has pointed out, first he pointed out the trust deficit, and then he pointed out the cost factor. But I also understand any naval platform of even a shipbuilding is a complex today, is a competitive nowadays. You have several players who have already taken a space in, but still we have to do something about this. Now, question to you, how we can do that with regional partners, sir?
Thank you very much, and my compliments to all my learned seniors and panelists on very, very interesting ideas that have come up. Shipbuilding is very close to our heart. We have done a lot of work in Niti Aayog and tried to push the shipbuilding industry forward. In fact, a lot of other initiatives are also ongoing to bring Indian shipbuilding to world-class standards. Coming to the specific issue of regional collaboration, I think I cannot agree more with all my seniors here that trust and is the recipe that will glue us all together. So I can only quote a couple of examples which we have seen across the world. For example, the FREM frigate program, and let's look at the Eurofighter program, or look at the F-35. These are all very expensive programs which has provided great capability to the individual participating countries. I think it is extremely feasible and possible for our three countries and maybe other like-minded countries, maybe the other island countries with whom we also work with, or maybe some of the other countries in the Bay of Bengal, to also have the regional equivalent of the FREM frigate program. This can be structured in the same way like the FREM was built, in different shipyards, bringing in the competitive advantage of each country, from weapons to radars to systems to final integration to some of the great capabilities that our shipyards such as L&T, who I notice is on this panel. They have digital twin concepts in shipbuilding, and I'm sure between our three countries we'll have the right scale and size to have one frigate, which can be the some name we can give it, which is common to all our heritage, and really it can be a world-class project. It'll cost us a lot lesser. We'll have the supply chain locally available. We'll have common training. We'll have common maintenance programs, and this will bring in a large amount of solidarity. So my plea, haath jod ke, is let us look at how together we build one ship which meets the requirement of all three ships. I'm not saying we have to build a destroyer tomorrow. Let's start with an OPV, then we can graduate to a frigate or a corvette. But let's build a corvette together. And I'm sure the Indian Navy's design team, Indian shipyards, Bangladesh shipyards, Sri Lankan shipyards, all of us have respective competencies. And I think one of the key outcomes from this discussion should be that we talk to our respective governments to create the equivalent of the FREM frigate program in this region. This is my submission, sir. Thank you very much.
Dan, meanwhile, if this is fixed, I'm again back to Admiral Dhowan. Sir, the question is how we can do that. It is not about small or big country, but somebody has to have a mechanism. Can we have some sort of SA fund, say a special purpose, when all these neighboring countries can pull in, India can pull in and initiate share technology? Is it a doable idea today? To Admiral Dhowan, sir.
Certainly, everything is possible if we have the desire and the inkling, and we have a mutually beneficial program. And I'm not mentioning issues related to the line of credit, which is one avenue for providing the financial support. But certainly we can work towards a program which is mutually beneficial, and we can provide the expertise of our designers and of our shipyards. Just to give you an example, there was a ship made called Barracuda for the Mauritian Coast Guard. And that is the first time that a ship was made to meet the requirements of that country. So an offshore patrol vessel not only had a helicopter deck, but it had a hold, It had a crane to meet the requirements so that it could meet the requirements of the islands for disaster relief and so on. Similarly, when the offshore patrol vessels were built for Sri Lanka, a lot of effort and inputs went in. I remember Admiral Ravindra and me discussing on some very tricky issues which had come in, and we were there to support each other to make sure that the offshore patrol vessel program was built. And as the problems came up during the constructions, they were mutually resolved to the satisfaction of both sides. So it is not something which is undoable. We need to have a program. We need to first understand what is the requirement, because that is where it starts from. And then we can tailor-make something to meet the requirement of our littoral neighbors, specifically in this case, both Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. We have some very professional people who can sit and get involved with the project ab initio stages and draw up exactly what is required. And the designers are there, the shipyards are there, they have the capability, and they will tailor-make a ship or a patrol vessel, big or small, to meet the requirements. And here, as Commodore Sujit said, we can look at a combined program. You know, let us say, for example, we took an offshore patrol vessel program between the Indian Navy, Sri Lankan Navy, and Bangladesh Navy, or any other Navy who want to join in. Then we can tailor-make that, because these ships which are built in a modular construct these days, it is very easy to change things around. And our shipyards have the flexibility to do that. So I'm sure that when the professionals from the various navies or various countries sit across the tables along with the shipyards, it is very much doable to the satisfaction and to meet the requirements of all concerned. Thank you.
Again, back to Admiral Nizam. Finally, questions were raised, but then what are your expectations from India if we come together and we build up and we really realize certain things which is not dream now? We have to do this. You know, post-COVID scenario, every penny counts. Our defense budgets are shrinking. Indian Navy defense budget has shrunk drastically too. What we can do? What platforms are you expecting from India, which you can cooperate, share technology? In fact, share capital. Is it doable, sir?
Yeah, of course. I think I'm very optimistic. We have started the joint patrol and joint exercises, and a lot of courses, a lot of trainings together, a lot of visits, very high officials and, very high military officers between the two countries. It's very, very encouraging, yeah. And not only that, even in search and rescue operations, we used to do together. So it's very encouraging. Regarding the shipbuilding, I think it is possible. We can take an effort. At least we can make a corvette, at least not the frigate, together, because personally I have seen the sensors and equipments of India are very good, very good. We can use that knowledge also know-how. I think the approach can be made. We have already made the LPCs, large patrol craft, in our Pune shipyard. So we have got the experience of making the ships. So your technology and our experiences, we can combine together, and it is very much possible to build a corvette together. And this is not, the coordinated effort with the two countries, but I believe firmly that this will bring the two navies more together. It will bring the more confidence between the two navies. Anyway, I think approach can be made, and we can take the efforts in this aspect at the appropriate level.
Thank you, Admiral. Now back to Admiral R.K. Dhowan. This is because anyway, a lot of this is happening virtually, but a lot of Indians are watching. And before I put this question, I'd like to put the perspective. Even a defense journalist, when I cover within Indian Armed Forces, Indian Navy has done a far more job in terms of indigenization. The platforms are highly indigenized. Their technical expertise is highly indigenous, local, and smart compared to all. But having said that, to Admiral Dhowan, despite all this achievement, the budget issue is contagious. Still, the Navy gets the lowest budget and is shrinking day by day, to the point last year Navy got some about 13% of the total defense budget. There's a mismatch in our maritime outreach and effort and the budget. How do you define this, sir?
Yeah, Manish, before I answer the budget issue, in your preamble to the question, you talked about the level of indigenization and that we are building ships in India, etc. I just want to take you back, or take the audience who are listening back, and just give a little background of how the Indian Navy achieved this self-reliance and indigenization. And for that, I would like to go back right to the very independence, because the Indian Navy made its first perspective plan way back in 1948, just 1 year after independence, where we talked of indigenous shipbuilding. We inducted naval architects into the Navy in 1955. We built our first naval patrol vessel, INS Ajay, in 1961 at Garden Reach in Kolkata. And we set up a naval design directorate with some foresight in 1964. So for over 50 years now, our naval designers have been designing, and our indigenous shipyards have been building ships for the Indian Navy, resulting in our transformation from a buyer's Navy to a builder's Navy. Now today, as I said, it's a matter of great pride that we have over 50 ships and submarines under construction in our own shipyards. But to actually understand the level of indigenization, we will have to consider a ship into three basic components. And those components would be the move component. Well, actually, the first would be the float component, then the move component, and the fight component. So in the float component, we have achieved about 90% indigenization levels. And I'm sure it'd be a matter of great pride for every Indian to learn that our first indigenous aircraft carrier under construction at Kochi is being constructed with Indian steel, developed by DRDO and produced by the Steel Authority of India Limited. In the move component, we have achieved about 50 to 60% indigenization. And this is an area we need to work much more harder for production for making gas turbines, as well as major propulsion systems within the country. In the fight component, we have achieved some level of indigenization by indigenizing our radars, some sonars, the combat management systems, electronic warfare systems, communication systems, some guns, some rocket launchers, missiles in collaboration, but still the fight component has to remain our major focus. And this is where the DRDO and the coordination with the Navy comes in, of course, which is good, but we need to make it much more comprehensive in terms of prioritization of the cutting edge of technology which is required, the timeline which are taken by the production agencies, and our efforts have to be that we have to progressively increase the indigenous content in our ships and submarines so that our ships and submarines in the future can be 100% made in India. You're absolutely right. For a Navy where there is so much of importance in the maritime domain, we need a much larger budget, which has actually shrunk down to less than 12% now. And there is a need to have a budget which will meet our requirement. What the Navy has is a maritime capability perspective plan, which is a 15-year perspective, which outlines the blueprint of the future Indian Navy. And this requires that the budget is made available on a regular basis so that various programs of ships, submarines, aircraft combat management systems, the weapons and sensors, cutting edge of technology is inducted so that the Navy can be a multi-dimensional network force. So we need to make sure that we have adequate allocation of resources, because if that is not happening, then what we are doing is we have to prioritize. And that means that, the balance in the Navy may suffer, because you may induct something and not induct something else because of lack of budget. So to have a balanced Navy, to have a robust Navy, to have a capable Navy, you need to have adequate budget available. Otherwise, we are just doing prioritization, and we need to actually see that our maritime capability perspective plan is implemented in its correct perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it is important to understand, and you said that the budget is insufficient to do justice to the Navy modernization plan, and that's also linked to the economy, the blue economy we're talking about. So Navy is all about more investment, is economic growth. They are linked in that way. So what we have been talking, I am sure you heard Admiral Dhowan and Admiral Nizam, and of course Commodore Sudhir pointed out. We're talking about some of the platforms, some of the things we can do in reality, and what Sri Lanka can expect from India, to work jointly on some of the platforms, share a technology, share capital, and grow capacity in the maritime naval platforms and broader defense platforms. Can we do it now? To Admiral.
Yes, sir. Yes, Manish. When you buy a ship, I was telling that we are looking at for next 50 years. Normally a ship runs for about 20 years, then go for a refit, and then again run for another 20 years. So, and the ships are very expensive also because of that. Not like aircraft, ships are very expensive. So the advantage that we buy a ship from India is, where that I always argue, that when we buy a big ship from India, we don't require to have docking and other facilities and repair facilities developed in our country. Because it's a matter of 24 hours for the ship to sail to India and go for a dock or a repair. So that is one of the big advantage a small country like us has, when you have the availability of the repair facilities very cheap, and when you doesn't want to develop your own facilities, it is very easy. And the second thing is, Sri Lanka's main requirement is the offshore petrol vessels, because as you know that I told that there is no landmass south of Sri Lanka up to Antarctica. We have 200 miles of exclusive economic zone, and so patrolling the exclusive economic zone and protecting our resources is very important. I would say that we are owner of a big estate, where that we have marked the boundary, but there are no guards. So everybody jumps into our estate and pluck the things and go away without getting caught. So for that, we have to have more OPVs which can stay out at sea for a long time and do that. So for that reason, the OPVs that we bought from India was very good, and we ran it well for almost 3 years now. And we have very good experience in having SLNS Sayura, which was OPV which that we bought some time back, about 20 years back, and after a major refit, it is still running. So as I want to say again, that our advantage is that we don't require to develop a lot of repair facilities back at home. And the second thing is funding. See that we can always negotiate with a friendly country like India, and to have some sort of an agreement where that we pay in a installment basis, and that will help, and that will attract especially our central government and the budget people in the finance ministry in a big way, because they can't pay for a big ship at one go. So these advantages are there, At the same time, we have compatible equipment. Now, I will come back to another thing, that we have a trilateral maritime cooperation agreement with Sri Lanka, Maldives and India. Now, that is basically for the Coast Guard. Now, we had the idea of bringing in Mauritius and Seychelles also into it. But the meetings were not held for some time, so it does not happen. Now, for example, one of the areas which covers in this trilateral maritime organization, trilateral maritime cooperation, is the oil spill response. Now, our three countries, whatever the oil spill equipment that we have, are compatible. We can share them in a case of emergency. So I was wondering why that we failed, where that the Mauritius is having a big disaster. If we had this agreement going, we all on the western side of Indian Ocean would have helped Mauritius in this hour of need. So these cooperation, these agreement and the exercises that we do are very important for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things, Admiral Ravindra has highlighted, is for the people who are watching us. This very fundamental difference, between the free trade zone from the land perspective, which we call the special economic zones. Could you explain this question to either Admiral Ravindra or Admiral Dhowan can explain? Can we have certain cohesive economic special zone in terms of the maritime, which we have a better custom, efficient custom, free flow of ships, and more trade? How this can be better? Could you explain to our readers, if they would like to know, and also to viewers who are watching us? To Admiral Dhowan, please. I would like to begin this.
Well, it's there are two aspects of the question which you're asking. We can have these industrial zones and the economic zones as part of the ports, but that would be the zones which we have on land. They are linked with the ports and they are linked with the economic development and then that aids in the transshipment or the movement of trade, etc. But out at sea, as you know, there are no boundaries on the high seas, and everything is beyond 12 nautical miles is technically international waters, and every country has its exclusive economic zone in which you're going to be exploiting your resources. So what is happening is that certainly with the development of the shipping and seaborne trade and the partnerships in the maritime trade between various countries, various zones, industrial zones or the special economic zones are going to be coming up in the vicinities of our major ports and harbors. And that is an area where the economic activity can happen. That is the area where the collaboration in the maritime domain can happen, because thereafter it also becomes easy to transport the trade from that export zone or from that maritime trade zone to other parts of the world. And basically, when we talk of maritime trade, it's not just a movement of freight within the country. It's by coastal shipping. It is actually a transshipment which takes place to other countries. For example, Colombo is a major transshipment hub, and nearly 50 to 60% of what is handled as cargo in Colombo is either destined to or from India. So therefore, these zones which come up in the vicinity of our major harbors and ports, and we have transshipment hubs, that is what is going to help us increase our bilateral trade. That is going to increase the economic activity. That is going to, this is all part of the blue economy that we talk about, because this is the sustainable development that we talk about, the development of all our maritime interests, but with optimal utilization of resources, with minimum impact on the environment to ensure sustainable development. And that is the key word. In future, we will have to be very careful that these various zones that come up, these various transshipment hubs that come up, they are with minimum carbon footprint. so as to make sure that we are not going to be polluting the seas, or that we are going to make sure that all the development is sustainable development.
Thank you. I quickly back to Admiral Ravindra. I would like to comment, briefly on this, because from Sri Lanka perspective, can we have something called free trade zone in the maritime across the region that promotes the free flow of cargo, efficient customs and port development management? And if you have expectations from India to jointly cooperate and collaborate and get things done, what do you think quickly, sir, to Admiral Ravindra?
Yeah, I agree with Admiral Dhowan. But he said that free trade zones has to be closer to the harbors, so that transshipment and the moving cargo will be very much cheaper. So I think that it is very important that we have such a zone, so that the Indian companies and Sri Lankan companies can invest, any other countries' companies can invest, and then use that facility for the betterment of our people and our nation.
Thank you, but not last and the least one, the very important, which we would like to know about. We always, get to hear from the media reports about one of the development on Hambantota port. Could you talk about how it is helping Sri Lanka grow in terms of trade with other countries? What is the model behind the Hambantota? And why there is so much of news out of Hambantota all the time?
I was defending Hambantota for last 20 years. It is, as you know, that Hambantota harbour was given by the previous government, which was in power in Sri Lanka, for 19-year lease to one of the Chinese companies. And we got $1.1 billion US from that deal, and 70% of the stakes are held by this Chinese company. But as you know, that Hambantota harbour was developed when the present government, that is Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa, the president, he's the one who developed the Hambantota harbour. But he never had this in mind to sell it or to lease it to anybody. The idea was to run by us. So now with the new government, yesterday our general election was there, the cabinet was meeting today for the first time. So they have said, even during the election, that Hambantota agreement will be reviewed. But as you know, that it has to be done in a very careful way, because we are dealing with a very powerful country, China, and then we have to deal with them and come to some sort of a agreement where that we have better stakes from Hambantota. And there are two things in Hambantota that you have to understand. The Hambantota harbour was a different harbour. What the engineers did was they dig a hole inside the land and then they filled it with the water. So whatever the soil which was taken out from Hambantota was put into another place, and they made an artificial island. Now these things are very, very complicated issues. Now we have an island in Sri Lanka, south of Sri Lanka, which is not there in our map. Or is a new artificial island which came up. As you know, that Chinese are very capable of doing that. At the same time, the harbour itself cannot be dredged. It will be remained at 17 meters and 16 meters at the entrance, because we have hit the rock bottom. So if you are going to dig more than that, if you want to dredge it, it is impossible. So that what I have to say is, the people who are so worried about Hambantota have to see into two things. One is that this harbour has a limitation. So which are the ships which are going to come to this harbour? It cannot be the triple E ships or 18,000 container carrying ships, because they can't enter, because it's only 17 meters.
Yes. Yes.
At the same time, the ownership of the artificial island and how that to be negotiated and what that we are going to do. So it's complicated issue, but I can assure you that we always assure that it won't be another naval base. The security of the Hambantota harbour 100% handled by the Sri Lanka Navy. And we know the sentiments of India, and we don't want to jeopardize the good relationships or the security of India because of one day. So it is very clear. As a CDS, I have told that in New Delhi, in front of large audience. As a retired CDS, I am saying that with certain authority, that India should not be worried about Hambantota and give us some time for the new government to come up with a better solution, and which will be, good for both the countries.
I think, thank you, Admiral Ravindra. Very formidable statement. You filled all the trust deficit what we're talking about by your statement. We are running short of time, and we will have few questions before I request Commodore Samaddar to conclude the discussion. So I will take few questions very quickly. There are people asking, how can India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka navies come together to collaborate for peace and prosperity in the entire APAC region? Mrita Saha asking, I would like to ask Admiral Nizam to comment on this, sir. How can we all come together and bring peace in the APAC region? To Admiral Nizam, your message.
Very nice questions, and I think it's very much possible, if you want to have a peace in this region, especially in the Bay of Bengal and Indian Ocean, you must come together and work together. Especially, I told that in the beginning, that trust and confidence is the key. Before everything, you must have a trust and confidence on each other. So, before having 100% trust and confidence, we can start with the common, which in the fields where we have the common interest, like the non-traditional threats, we can work together. Like the search and rescue, we can work together. Like the fishing, deep sea fishing. Also, we can give the protection to the deep sea fishing, which can work together, the three countries. So these are things we can work together, even for the climate change and for the environmental degradation. These things we can work together, and the navies very well can work together in this non-traditional to face the non-traditional threats. And this will, help us, and also, anti-terrorism activities. If we share the information together, that will help us, the three countries.
Thank you. Wonderful message. Back to Admiral Dhowan. A lot of questions are coming, which I'll sum up to you, sir. In one question, people are asking about how does Sagar vision of Prime Minister helping in achieving maritime collaboration, and also does it help our neighboring countries, in this vision? Quickly, sir, to Dhowan. Admiral Dhowan, please.
I would like to say that the vision of Sagar of the Honorable Prime Minister is intended to have the security and growth for all in the region. This is like all the boats which rise with the high tide all together. It is not intended that it should be a partnership which is at an advantage of one country or the other. And therefore, it is intended to provide security and growth. And this is part of the Maritime Cooperation roadmap that we have bilaterally with many countries, and that is to be worked out even jointly with some countries. We have various fora where this is discussed. As I said, Indian Ocean Rim Association is one at the political level. We have BIMSTEC, which looks at the other countries which are there in the Bay of Bengal and so on. So what we need to do is that we also need to, by my understanding, link up the advantages of Sagarmala and Sagar. That means when we talk of development of ports and harbors in India, we also provide the assistance between Sagarmala to our other littoral neighbors under the ambit of neighborhood first, or under the security and growth for all in the region. And that assistance, as I said, is both for capacity building as well as capability enhancement in terms of ease at patrols that are carried out, in terms of training that is provided, in terms of maintenance which is carried out. These are all aspects of capability enhancement. And capacity building, we've discussed earlier, is with regard to actual hardware that can be provided in terms of ships or patrol craft or weapons and sensors and equipment. So we will have to work on this issue and have, I would say, a comprehensive maritime cooperation roadmap. Only then we can fulfill the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister of Sagar, that is security and growth for all in the region, to its correct perspective and correct level.
Thank you, Admiral Dhowan. Somebody from the viewers has pointed out Admiral Dhowan always articulate and profound. And with that, I would request Commodore Sujit to make a concluding remarks, but not before a question I take from Somna Joshi. She has asked, can we push for special financial terms with liberal payment scheduled as a cornerstone to promote regional cooperation? To Commodore Sujit, and then please proceed for concluding remarks, sir.
Thank you. Capturing what has transpired in the last 1.5 hours of some very interesting concepts in 2 minutes of conclusion is quite a task. But very quickly, before I answer Ms. Joshi's question, as all of you know, she was former Secretary of Defense Finance, so there is obviously a strong message there that if she asks the question, there is obviously the answer in that question itself. So I would like to say that there. So we started this discussion from a very geopolitical perspective, drilled down to the pandemic, and from there we looked at how it was impacting the national economies, security and development of the regional countries, and we looked at how it impacts climate change. We looked at issues of governance of areas beyond national jurisdiction. This is something that we could particularly look at, as Admiral Ravindra in his remarks said that there is nothing for several thousands of miles from the south of Sri Lanka. But these are all areas beyond national jurisdiction, and all three of us, three countries here representing here, should take that very seriously as an agenda point. Then we had Admiral Ravindra, who spoke about the collaboration that already existed, spoke about the distances to Andaman and Nicobar on one side and to Maldives on the other, but only 24 nautical miles separates India and Sri Lanka. That's very significant. I think there's a tremendous message which has gone by that one line. And of course, subsequently, he brought out that relationship with India is one of the guiding pillars of the foreign policy of both our countries. And I think that was a wonderful statement from you, sir. He also brought about how this exchange took place. It was a remarkable idea to talk about how India sent OPVs to Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka exported back FICs. This is the sort of trade that has to develop between us, where we use the competitive advantage of each respective country to the common good of all of us. Admiral Nizam, sir, you spoke about the importance of the behoves on the entire nation, and a whole of government approach is taken in responding to all crises and opportunities that come to us. We now have a crisis and an opportunity, and I think it would be very nice if all the participants here emphasize the need for jointness in the way we go forward, in the way of collaboration that we can do. And what is lacking for regional collaboration? I think Admiral Nizam said a very pertinent point. It's a simple question, but has got extremely complex dimensions. So we need to figure this out, and I don't think anybody has got an answer as to how we can do it. But he was very clear. He said, first and foremost, we need political will. I think to a large extent, we now have the political will between our three countries to support it. We also have a great sense of trust between us now. I don't think we have ever had such a high level of trust. So that's the second part that we have got. And the third part of being able to stand up to injustices of one country against a third country. And we have seen that happen now. And Admiral Ravindra's remark that India has nothing to fear from Happan cannot be a more stronger statement of trust and cooperation that we have heard in this whole week of various events across the world. So with that, we also talked about how we could look at partnering in more concrete terms, in terms of hardware support that will go directly into creating jobs, capability and capacity within the three countries. And one of the ideas that came up was in looking at joint shipbuilding, using the spare capacities and the competitiveness that exists in our country between the three of us. So Admiral Dhowan has highlighted the immense amount of ship design capability that we have, the advantages of modular construction that we can do so that the hull form and engines and propulsion systems are common, but the rest of the equipment can be design fit or built to specifications of each individual country's particular needs. Admiral Ravindra also highlighted this point that as Sri Lankan Navy, one of the key roles with its large EEZ and huge tracts of land where other people are taking away its economic resources, particularly through fishing and pollution. And all of this is going to impact Sri Lanka in a strong way. They certainly need a more viable and longer-legged offshore patrol vessels. This would be a similar case with Bangladesh. So maybe one of the programs that we can look at is a common hull for India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, or maybe Myanmar or Maldives, whoever wants to join in, as a common OPV program. We can have some fancy word to describe this program, but it can be a common platform by which all of us benefit from the scale and size of this, to reduce costs, reduce, as Admiral Ravindra brought out, our infrastructure costs, reduce life cycle costs, and always be able to upgrade with locally procured and locally designed and locally built equipment, which is available in India and all the other countries. All this requires funds, and we spoke about the Barracuda, we spoke about the concept of scalable designs that we can do, and all of that. We also looked at finally, Admiral Ravindra could join in very late. We are grateful to him for having sorted out his audio issues. The next time, I'm sure that will become better. He said some very important things for us, particularly on issues of the Special Maritime Free Zone, and of course, on Hanuman Dota, which I think is a very significant statement coming in from the former CDS. I have only one last point to say here, and if I might just extend it, Sagarmala and Sagar are of course linked to Indian Ocean region and the Bay of Bengal, but where we have a great strength lying ahead of us immediately is that the chair of the IORA is going to pass on to Bangladesh next. So we have a year now for this forum to sit together, debate. We have our email IDs, we have whatever else we have various think tanks together. Let us put up a concrete proposal for the next IORA, which looks at hardware cooperation in terms of platform systems and equipment that can be worked together. And from my own side, I have said this in some other forums also, we also need to see how we can use space-based assets and space-based competencies that India has in creating a space-based driven blue economy model of cooperation, looking at IW, looking at rogue ships, looking at pollution. All of this is now possible with the technology that we have, the artificial intelligence capacities that India has developed. This can be something which is good at the global level. So I think this is where we are. My submission at the end is, of course, as IORA chair comes to Bangladesh, there's a great opportunity ahead of us now to put our minds together.
Ravindra, thank you, Commodore Sujit. Thank you very much.